Then I took a smidge and applied it down there.
This one's wife. Meghan threatens Harry. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. As you know from my work, control is the most important aspect to the narcissist and forms one of the four prime aims. The narcissist must control whoever comes upon their radar, and there's a wide array of methods that the narcissist will use to achieve that control, to maintain that control, and to nullify threats to control. As a consequence of the need for this control, the narcissist is calibrated to notice threats to control in a way that non-narcissists would not. The narcissist has a hypersensitivity to actions, omissions, and things that are said or not said, which link to the issue of control, so that the narcissism can then be galvanized to ensure that the issue of control is addressed. This means that the narcissist can often exhibit an uncanny knack of recognizing when you might be considering checking out of the relationship. In some instances, it's blatantly clear. You explain that you want to end the relationship, or you tell the narcissist that it's over. In other instances, you might articulate that you've been having second thoughts about the relationship, or you start talking about the fact that you're not happy. In some instances, however, you may not have expressly stated something, but you are thinking about the possibility of ending the relationship, or that you're generally not happy with the state of it. And naturally, when you're being abused by a narcissist, you're not going to be happy with the state of the relationship. Even though you've not articulated it directly or expressly, the narcissist invariably demonstrates an interesting ability to recognize that the relationship is under threat. They pick up on the subtleties of your behaviors. Any potential demise of the relationship with a narcissist is naturally a threat to control, and this is particularly problematic where the individual holds the status of intimate partner primary source, because this is the most important person in the fuel matrix. Accordingly, if this one's wife believes that her control over Harry is slipping because he's less interested in her, spending more time away from her, talking about other people, showing an interest in moving, whatever it might be, or just generally seeming distant, this naturally is translated as a substantial threat to her need for control. The narcissism then utilizes what is known as a preventative hoover, i.e., the narcissist does something to try and prevent the victim from threatening that control any further, i.e., to stop them leaving, to stop them undertaking the course of action that is causing the problem. That preventative hoover can take many different forms. In some instances, it might be laying on the charm. It might suddenly be reinstating the golden period through a respite period. It might be flattering and complimenting the victim. It might be turning the screws in terms of the manipulations. It might be issuing threats against the individual, and sometimes being so bold as to say, "Don't you think about leaving me or else." It might be by doling out a pity play. "I can't manage without you. My world will collapse if you go. You can't do this to me after everything that I've done for you. I'll be left bereft and distraught." There are lots of different ways that the narcissist can utilize a preventative hoover, and we see a rather subtle version of the preventative hoover being utilized by this one's wife in relation to Harry. Where is this? Well, it comes through Radar Online, and it's worthwhile detailing what's in the article to then break it down for you to demonstrate what this one's wife is actually doing vis-a-vis the narcissistic dynamic. The article states as follows: "This one's wife could face a relapse into the darkest period of her life, melodrama, if Prince Harry succeeds in repairing ties with the royal family, a psychologist has warned. Raising fears, renewed exposure to the institution could push her back towards suicidal thoughts." I see. Accordingly, the potential reconciliation that Harry, through his PR people, has been banging on about is viewed as a threat to this one's wife's control over him. The suggestion is that if he wants to spend more time with his family, that means he's spending less time with her. If he wants to move back to the United Kingdom and presumably transplant his family there, this exposes this one's wife to a greater level of threats to control because she's hugely unpopular in the United Kingdom. Accordingly, this means that not only is there a threat to her control over Harry, because he's deciding that he wants to move back to the UK or at least spend more time there, it also results in her being exposed to a number of appliances who she struggles to control, namely other members of the royal family, the British public, and the British media. The article continues by explaining, just last week, Harry returned from a 4-day visit to the UK, during which he reconnected with King Charles in a 54-minute meeting at Clarence House. The encounter has fueled speculation about a wider reconciliation with the monarchy, but sources say this one's wife feels threatened and triggered by Harry's reunion and plans to worm his way back into the bosom of the royal family. Harry's renewed closeness with his family has really unsettled this one's wife, a source close to the couple said. She confides that she fought hard to break free from that life. Really, she just upped and went, and doesn't want to be pulled back, naturally because that's a threat to her control. The worry is that stepping into royal circles again could reopen the scars that once drove her to the brink. Psychologist Claire Deacon, who specialises in trauma, backed up our source by saying this one's wife's past cannot be separated from any potential return for Harry to the royal family. It is not erased by distance, and even years later, stepping back into a space that once felt emotionally unsafe can activate past fears, doubts, and protective behaviours, she said. If reconciliation led to a return or increased UK presence, this one's wife could understandably feel conflicted, torn between duty, identity, and the peace she's built since. Friends of the Sussexes say the issue is particularly acute when it comes to their children. This one's wife has made it clear to friends that she'll go to any length to protect her children from the struggles she faced, one insider said. Just the thought of short trips back to the UK leaves her uneasy. She fears it could cost her the freedom she worked so hard to build in California. Harry, however, has not hidden his wish to reconnect with his homeland. He wants his children to grow up in Britain, a source said. Harry has been clear that he'd like to spend far more time in Britain. Advisers believe he is quietly pressing behind the scenes for security assurances that would allow regular visits. One shrink told us there's a real danger Harry's royal reunion could lead to this one's wife slipping back into old patterns. She's worked hard to find her voice and restore her well-being, and Harry's return to royal life could totally overturn that progress, with potentially catastrophic and deadly consequences for her mental health. Accordingly, what's this one's wife been up to? Well, the suggestion of spending more time in the United Kingdom and reconciliation threatens her control over Harry. Accordingly, her narcissism needs her to issue a preventative hoover. It may recognise that pleading directly with Harry isn't going to meet with success, and therefore, what it's attempting to do is curry favour and sympathy by getting the media on side. There is little doubt in my mind that this one's wife has leaked this information to Radar Online, basically saying, I'm really worried about my mental health. I'll be suicidal again if we have to go back to the United Kingdom. And therefore, what she's done is she has, in effect, threatened Harry by leaking information to a news outlet stating, if you insist on going back to the UK, this will affect my mental health and it could have deadly consequences, i.e., I'll do something to myself. This is the low level of class that you come to expect from this one's wife. Rather than discuss it directly with her husband, she resorts to these tactics of leaking information so they appear in the press. But it's no surprise when it comes to the behaviour of this one's wife by virtue of her being a narcissist. The United Kingdom represents a massive threat to her control because it's perceived as a hostile environment by virtue of her self-created unpopularity. This is why she stayed away, because she's nullified that threat to control by staying in a position of withdrawal. The potential for her having to visit, if she goes with Harry to maintain control over him, or if he keeps going on his own, threatens her control over him, is problematic for her. Accordingly, there are these threats to control, so her narcissism issues a preventative hoover through a third party, the news outlet, utilising threat and pity play. We know that this one's wife has played the mental health card and the self-harm card in the past. Many people didn't believe it. And here, she's rolling it out again, albeit slightly subtly through a news agency, for the purposes of basically issuing a threat to her husband. If you insist on going back to the United Kingdom, that could cause me to have some form of mental health breakdown. So don't do it. That's the message that's being sent. And it's no surprise that she would behave in this way, because naturally her narcissism drives her to nullify these potential threats to control, and it doesn't think twice of doing so in an underhand manner of leaking information to the press in order for her to get her way. Thus, it shows the desperation of the narcissist when control is threatened, that hypersensitivity to the issue of control, and how she will sink so low as to issue threats to her husband about her well-being, and do so through the press. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.